Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Meet Menaca to celebrate you. Firstly, a very warm welcome and a huge thank you for making our first anniversary celebration a huge success. So thank you to everyone who supported us over the year and came and told some kind words, and it was really overwhelming experience for me personally, and I'm sure my entire team will agree that without your support, love, and guidance, we wouldn't be where we are today, entering the second year and following through. Hopefully, we will make you proud in our second year. Today, in our episode 55, we are going to discuss life of a widow. We have a very eminent speaker, Ghazala Jabeen, with us. A very warm welcome to you, Ghazala.
Thank you very much, Menaca, for having me here. Great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. A brief note about Ghazala. She's a founder of multi-award business from number one marketing machine to Bollywood burnout. She has appeared in various radio shows and appeared on TV with a forthcoming appearance on TV documentary on the highlights Asian doing good for North Wales, UK, and peek into their private lives. Ghazala's story from suppression to expression has become world famous. She appears on the Hall of Fame with BHF, awarded an ambassador for direct selling and network marketing industry. She is featured as one of the most successful women around the world, amongst many other incredible accolades, but amongst all these wonderful achievements, and lives a broken, beating heart. Ghazala's story from making a life and death, decision to marry against her parents' wishes, became a powerful story that led her number one best-selling book called Loved, Lived, Lost, a true story of a lasting love and sacrifice. Hear her story of she fulfilled her beloved husband's last wish, and she stayed strong to fulfill it against all odds. She lit an iconic castle purple, paid a powerful tribute to the love she lost, her husband Martin, aka Mr. HMS of 25 years. If her story doesn't move to tears, nothing will. It will also bring hope, faith, and strength on how you find the courage to move on from this tragedy and stay positive. It is a powerful story. I have heard you speak before. I have read your write-ups, Ghazala, but every time I am moved. And, I come from a region in the world, in Southeast Asia, where widowhood is not an easy experience at all. For anyone, anywhere in the world, it is a difficult experience, but it is also made more complex and more brutal and more difficult, unfortunately, in certain parts of our world. I know it's a very personal and difficult life experience. For sure, not an easy one to share. So what is the reason behind you sharing this story?
Well, first of all, yes, Menaca, when I hear some of the words even talked about my journey, it's just another reminder of quite a journey that it has been. And we don't really know when these things actually come in our life in the unexpected turns. But for one thing is for sure, is that the love that Martin and I had to start with was really quite a challenging one from the Eastern Western culture acceptance. All right. So to come from a Pakistani background to wanting to marry an Englishman was really something that a parent does not want to hear. Although we are in the changing world of the world is one and we're intermingling everywhere, the biggest fight for life and death even was at the point of even sharing this with my parents. How do you tell your parents that they have kind of wished and hoped that they want to arrange a marriage for you, and suddenly you're telling them that you want to marry out of the family requests and wishes? So that was the first part of my life and death journey, in the sense of saying, Mom, Dad, I've fallen in love with an Englishman. I went to my Muslim peers and asked for their guidance because that's all I knew. And I knew that I had to do it right because I love Mom and Dad, and I had to give them the opportunity to know the truth. And that was when you are faced with the risky space of the honor killings, because that is exactly where my story lies. And having come from suppression, it was that the most important thing for me, my dad always said, was honesty is best policy. And if that is what we're going to put the neck on the line, let's do that. And that's why we, as soldiers and people in war zones, whatever, we do fight for what we believe, and the strength that lies is there. And that's what I said to them. So although that was the starting point of my journey, and my Muslim priest did not really welcome that. They wanted to tell my dad, we must stop what your daughter wants to do, because we're sending the wrong message to everybody else, and we must stop it. And yet Martin was willing to become a Muslim, to marry me in the correct way and everything. And it was not really being seen. So it ended up that if I hadn't done what I did, which was to elope and marry Martin, I would have been sent to Pakistan to be married, or something else could have happened as well. But we did get married. The journey of our marriage has been wonderful. And on the day that I left home is the day that Martin wrote to my father and said, by the time you receive this letter, your daughter and I will be married. We're sorry that we've had to do it this way, but we tried to do it your way, but with no success. One thing I will say to you, he said to my dad, he said, Mr. Qayyum, your daughter will want for nothing. Everything I will provide. I hope that you realize the changing world we're living in, Ghazala is not the first and will not be the last of the changing times we are in right now. One thing I will do is make your daughter very proud, very happy, and hopefully one day we'll meet and make amends. And I then signed out to my dad to say that I have not gone against my wish. My dad always said that he knew that I was a girl that knows her mind, and if I know it, it's for the right reasons. I'm not just making hasty decisions. So with that, we had married. On the day I left home is the day that we were married, and then we had to have police protection for our marriage, etc. But the reason I'm sharing the life of a widow is people need to understand what sacrifice one had to take in order to get to the marriage place in the first. And when you are young at 20 years of age and you don't even know the outside world, and I was willing to go to Mecca to do the pilgrimage, to ask for my one wish to do this. I was willing to do whatever it took to make this wish come true. So it was not a light-hearted runaway or a light-hearted marriage. And the Martin did become a Muslim. So he was, the HMS stands for, his name was Harold Martin Swindells. And when he became a Muslim, he became a Habib Martin Swindells. That's where the Mr. HMS comes from. So that for that, he did everything that he did. We had the English wedding, we had the Muslim wedding. My parents, it took them eventually 4.5 years to eventually accept the marriage, which was nice. That it was actually my grandmother. This is the interesting thing. My mom and dad, and my dad being educated Western world, my grandma from Pakistan, village life, country life, nothing more of education than the love from her heart to the children. And she said, I don't care whether Ghazala's married a green man, yellow man, blue man, whatever man. She's my girl, and I love her, and I'm happy for my girl, and I want to see her. And she was going to come for her eye operation in the UK. And she said, before I have my operation, I could lose my sight completely, but I want to see my baby girl. I just know that she's grown, she's married, and I just don't care what you think, but I want to. So her heart, so it's the grandmother's heart. Again, the love drove this thing forward, and that's what helped the family make amends with it. And so that was so important for me to share from the space that I had a very good upbringing, an educated upbringing, a very strict upbringing, but against a lot of odds, I still fought out to be a voice, to do something that I felt strong about, regardless of taking a life risk. So the reason why I share my story is that, as Martin said, I'm not the first, and I won't be the last of the changing times we're living in. Education has become more of a thing. And to hear sometimes my mom say, I wish I had more education, I could make better choices. I don't know what to do. I don't know which way to go, who to turn to. And I just wish, because they would make different choices along the way. And she could only really lead by love, to give the best from as a mother. So I made it my business that even though I had to get to get beaten up for because I wanted to study further. I was happy to take a hit in the face for my education, and from suppression, from not allowed to speak a word, and to fight for my education, to get a hit in the face, and now to be in a position where I'm creating education programs was quite a journey. And this is why I opened up my doors to the vulnerable part of my story, that I need people to know that I had to fight for that as well. And now I'm in a place where I want to share the story, which is real, which is raw, which is vulnerable space of mine, the opening heart of mine, that I don't want people to do a little peekaboo and say, oh, I want to know a little bit about Gaza's story. What is she like? And I say to people, don't do a little opening of the door. Let me please open double doors and let me bring you straight into my broken heart. Let me share with you. This is real. This is what we're faced with. And I wasn't scared of my life being taken from me at 20 years of age. And I'm certainly not scared right now, because the heart lives with the truth as it speaks. Yeah.
Thank you, Ghazala. Huge, huge respect. And, all I can say is, welcoming into the double door, join the club. We have plenty of company on this platform for sure. So thank you so much for opening your heart, sharing your story. And it's, of course, a powerful story and definitely a story to be heard. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Can I ask you, because today is about the life of widow, and it is a difficult experience. Of course, to get there itself, you had to battle it. So how did you cope with this devastating news of a loss, particularly when you have fought so hard to get there in the first place?
Yeah, it is. You just are never ever prepared for a loss, ever, no matter what. And also, the important thing is that because there are so many expectations of people, how they should be, what they should do, how they should do, I think the biggest message to anybody in any situation like this is we're all unique and we all deal with it in our own unique way. And I think more importantly, that whilst everybody's worrying about what they should, people should just be mindful to how the individual is having to cope with the news itself. But when I was told that Martin had cancer and it was terminally ill, pancreatic cancer, there was no cure, it was advanced. I remember at the hospital, after Martin had some tests, and because Martin was very tired a lot of the time and he kept sleeping, and I said, oh, Martin, you're always sleeping. He said, no, wifey, leave me alone, I'm dying. I said, but Martin, we're all dying. He said, no, I am. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. And he said, I'm sure something's wrong. But one of the things he said is, he used to call me wifey, right? And he said, wifey, you know that I love your curries. I married you for your curries. I said, I thought you loved me and married me because I'm beautiful. He said, oh, yes. He said that as well. He said, but look, I love your curries. He said, but I can't eat them anymore. I said, well, if you only married me for my curries, does that mean you want a divorce? He said, no. We've come this far. We're going to see the journey through. I said, oh, thank God for that. But from that was the signs where we had to have tests. And then when we sat in front of the gastroenterologist, and he said that advanced stage of this was really cancer that we cannot, it's not curable. And what was given 11 months ended up being, it was just 9 days short of 3 months, and Martin passed away. But when we were sat in the specialist's area and the specialist said, it's terminal, and Martin said, I told you, wifey, I was dying. And I couldn't talk to Martin. My tears just rolled down. How do you take a news that your world that you fought for to be together for 25 years of your life that you've built, and suddenly the world has just been shattered by some news like this, and you have no words? The tears speak the words at that point. And I remember we didn't get so much help after that news, and we walked out of the hospital just hand in hand. I know that was like a walk of the last walk in hand we did. You cannot even describe that. When I sat in the car, I couldn't start the engine. I knew that this man that's given me the very best of the love and the life that I've had is not going to be around anymore. And Martin said in the car, wifey, he said, it's not the cancer I'm scared and worried about dying. The biggest fear for me is, how do I tell my children their dad is not going to be around anymore. That was the most devastating part of the death and the news. And that, for me, I realized that I'm going to be a widow. How do I even comprehend that term that I never thought I would have that title in my life? And that was the most cutting point of our life.
People who know me, nothing shakes me very often, but this one definitely did. I had to fight my tears. I have already known your story. And every time I hear your story, I find it still powerful every single time. And I know how devastating it can be. To be lucky in love is not easy. And, I unfortunately hasn't experienced it, so I can't talk for that. But, when you do, I can totally imagine how earth shattering it can be. But I think even the words you spoke, what Martin said, how you reacted, it all is really testament to the love you shared. So thank you so much is all I can say. Can I know what are the first thoughts that came to your mind, Ghazala? Because this is like it's like the day ends, starts and ends at two different levels totally. And like Martin said, when you have kids, of course it becomes even more devastating. So what were the thoughts which was running in your mind, and how did you respond to it?
My first thought was, there's got to be a way to fix Martin. He cannot go. That was my first thought, was there is so much medicine, so much we've done in today's world. There has to be some form of cure here. That was my first thought of, Martin, you can't go. We got so much life to live, because having had mum-in-law live with us, we spent a lot of time, our duty to take care of mum-in-law. Martin's mum lived with us throughout the whole time. We then, as working in business as well, and the children, our time was committed to work, the children, caring for our mum-in-law, my mum-in-law. And one of the first things when we had that was, what time have we got, that what we need to do in this time that is left? And Martin was very intelligent man, and he said to the oncologist, just tell me, be matter of fact, I need to know, because I have a beautiful young wife, 3 beautiful, clever children. I need to make every second count for time I have left. And then we started to make our plans of what are we going to do? What are the first things we're going to do? We created photographs of memories together for Martin with the children. And as we did the things, Martin had a love for classic cars. We arranged for a classic car show and a viewing for him to see. We wanted to see one of the old Rolls Royces, because his father used to own a Rolls Royce, and I had bought him a Bentley, and he wanted to know what the Bentleys were going to be like out there, and to go with the children, to show the children the love of the father's classic cars, which they have carried that interest in. And it was really like a bucket list. And when Martin was asking that, my thoughts were, oh, but Martin, you can't be going anywhere. I still need you. The children need you. And they're at this point that is what can we do? That was my first thought, was what can we do to keep you here? And I was trying to find every answer. I was looking for every magazine in the hospital for cancer treatments, at every part of the news information. I went online, and I just, my search was, how can I save my man?
Thank you so much, Ghazala. I'm definitely a bit lost for words today, but I guess particularly at a time like now than ever before, with COVID, so devastating effects as well, many more women and men are going through the same loss, the grief, the difficulties. So thank you so much for sharing this at this difficult time, because particularly I think it would be really helpful for many more, because it's not a easy time at all for anyone by any means. I already touched about the cultural difficulties, and what are the nuances, and how it can even make it even more painful for some. So I have no in-depth knowledge of your cultural background. I definitely know what happens in my cultural background or the similar areas. So what was the cultural expectations for you? How hard was it? And did you have to do something extraordinary to even survive, during that time or afterwards?
That's a really important question, actually, and it's an interesting one to share globally because all the different cultures have different ways to dealing with it, but the culture plays a major part in how do we deal with the loss and the process. For me, coming from a Muslim background, it was Church of England. Our life was very British, but the society that I was brought in was very Asian, and in what was difficult was that one of the most important things Martin and I said was that we will allow our faith to be totally unique to what our belief is within us, regardless to each other. Martin didn't question my Muslim part. I didn't question his part, even though he became a Muslim. But the part of the culture bit in my society was I was out of the society having married an Englishman in the first place. Although my mum was very supportive, my dad, he'd already just passed away just 8 months, well, just short of a year actually of Martin, but they had made their amends before my dad passed away. And he actually said, my dad said to Martin, Martin, you're a good man, a gentleman, and I'm glad for the fact that you made my daughter very happy, giving us 3 beautiful grandchildren. I'm sorry I did not accept you in our culture. And because he said to Martin, I don't want your white face in my brown family. And my father apologized for that statement before passing away. So one part of a cultural acceptance was my dad being bold and saying that statement with it. But then I realized that I was never part of my Asian culture because of that. So I couldn't conduct the ceremony in that way. But one thing I knew is that Martin wanted to be cremated. Now, the problem was I could not bring my mother, a Muslim woman, to come into a crematorium because that's not what we do. We bury them. So my sister wanted to come to be there as well. And of course, it was very difficult because I knew that through the service that it wasn't a religious service, but we did have a minister to speak about Martin's life. It was more about Martin's life and his children and what he had achieved. My children, the 3 of them, in a process like this, wanted to write their own eulogy and speak about their father. And if you were in that room, there would not have been a dry eye in the house when that process of the service went on. And I don't know how the children had the courage to talk about their wonderful dad in this point. And my son, my eldest boy, looked to the right side and there was dad's coffin, which was going to be having the curtains to close in with it. And he looked over to the side and he said, Dad, I will take care of mum and I will take care of my brother and sister. And I give you my word, as he said that. And at the end of it, as the curtains closed, the body was taken, obviously, in the crematorium side. It was my first experience to have something of my own in this space that is, as a Muslim woman, was a difficult cultural part to take part with it. And then we had asked the minister to say that we family needed some privacy. We had to switch off and we made I think the important thing here is we have to say what we feel, and people need to be more understanding that everybody's dealing with it. And the world has changed a lot in the way that either a mixed marriage or cultural side, and that people doing it in different ways. In that place was absolutely packed out from wall to wall, front to back, side to side of people of all different cultures. There was so much respect collectively of every culture that showed the unity at a time like that. And that's what is needed, is be more mindful of respecting the wishes of the people that's losing it because they're already grieving as it is, than adding more cultural pressures.
Sure. Thank you so much, Ghazala, for sharing those difficult moments. And I can totally understand how painful it must be every time you speak about that. But, when the cultural norms comes, in our culture, for example, I come from I am a Hindu, so we come from different cultures. One problem we have is a woman is not allowed to do the last rites. It's always a man's job, and if you only have a daughter, or even if you're just left as a wife, you won't be allowed. So I am not, I can't talk for anyone because I haven't done it. So of course, I can't, but I can totally understand where you come from. So there are always nuances. It's just not that it is in your culture or my culture. It is exactly like you mentioned. Every culture has its own barriers, own problems, own. So my request to all the participants, all the audiences on Facebook, YouTube, wherever you're listening to this, please, please, please pay attention, look closer, and be kind. Because today I put out a post, and some of you might have seen, because some of you are in our WhatsApp community. It is, none of us are here to fulfill anybody else's expectations. We are here to fulfill our own expectations. And I think the right thing to do is to respect that and allow people to do it. And I think that's the main message I would say with that, really. So thank you so much, Ghazala. With grief and loss and sadness, unfortunately for widows, it also comes with a lot of other important things, whether we like it or not. Particularly as a mother, when you have children, you have to go on. There are a lot of legal paperwork. There are a lot of difficult, official things to be done. And you cannot say, okay, fine, I'm not going to do any of those things. I'm just going to sit and sulk and the entire world will work. Unfortunately, we wish it does, but it doesn't. So how did you cope with it and how did you get on with it?
Actually, it was so difficult because I didn't know, number one, place where to start. What do I do? I know that the hospital guided for the registrar for the death certificate to do that. And then I couldn't deal with any of the other stuff because I just didn't know where my step one point would be. And I think if anything we can learn or do anything is make easier processes. That where do people go? What's the first thing they need to look at? Geographically as well, because we are around the world and different rules apply. And I think it's important for that. But for me, bless my son, my eldest boy, who's actually now 26, he said, Mum, I don't know what we're supposed to do, but don't worry, I've got your back. We're going to do this together, Mum. We'll go together and get Dad registered and then get the paperwork and then sort the rest. I also had Martin's daughter from his first marriage, grown-up lady. She is Jackie, and she said, we're here for you. Tell us what we need to do and guide you. So I think this is when the families need to step up as well to guide us, and not to interfere too much, but enough to guide us. And I was guided initially by that, but then for me, I contacted the welfare office and find out as a widow, what is my status in the support I get, because with having children still at school, I needed to know. So they said, normal circumstances, because Martin was a bit older than me, you would normally get what they call a widow's pension. And in our case with me was that I was not a pension age. I was a young widow. Widow at 45 meant I was not entitled to any pension because I'm not a pension age. So for me, they said, you still have children in school, so you would get a parent's bereavement allowance. And they guided me, but they said, you don't get normal. What we normally have in the UK is what they call single parent benefits support. In the UK, for me, that would have been the case, but I couldn't because Martin had a private pension. So the figures were over the threshold. And also we had children still in education. So that meant you didn't get the normal thing. So I didn't know about the legal part, my position. I just thought, I'm a single parent. I will get some financial support with my mortgage, with my house, with my bills, and cope with the children. And at least that part of the system will help me. It didn't really help me because they said, no, Martin's money of his private pension puts you over the threshold. You have to pay your own bills and you got to do your own thing, which then meant I hadn't even time to grieve. I had to look at how am I going to earn my income, my business, make that work so that I can keep the roof over our head And those legal stuff really just added to the stress, because you don't expect where to go, what to do, how to apply for it. Then you need certificates, death certificates to say you are the wife and everything, because my name still remained Ghazala Jabeen and Martin was Harold Martin Swindells. So therefore, I'm now trying to say I'm a Mrs. Swindells, but I'm a Mrs. Jabeen. All right. And so the complications were like, in addition to the grief. And it's not an easy process, Menaca, because you know, you're hurting, aren't you? You got wounds, and your wounds are heavy, and your heart is heavy, and you're looking at paperwork, and that's the last thing in your head, but it's important thing, because you now got to build the next life and the children's life, and it can mount up on the weight for you if you don't. So reach out for your hospital, reach out for doctors, community support, welfare, local, you know, directions, Google search some stuff, because those are the things that are needed. But most important, you need somebody right by you that can hold your hand while you're hurting, and they take some weight off that hurt for you by doing some of that stuff. And I was glad my son and some members of the family were supportive of it.
Sure, thank you so much, Ghazala, because it's a very important point. I mean, even in Asia, back home, you still need to go through it. But I think the systems are slightly different. Socially, you know, it's a very close-knit community. You know, we have positives and negatives everywhere. One thing is that even the neighbors will knock in and, you know, just do all those things. However, for the widows who do live in Western countries or outside your community, it becomes a challenge. So it's, you know, it's really important point you raised, that it's, you know, keep the ducks in the order, isn't it? It's, you know, these things will happen. It's only a time of, it's not a think of if, it will is a when, isn't it? But we don't think about it like that. So that, I think that hence we struggle with these things. So now going on to the grief itself, there's, as you said, you need time, you need privacy, but you also need time to grieve with someone. And I think it is about grieving with the right person, or crying with the right person, or be able to speak to the right person. Of course, I can't speak so much about grief, particularly not as of a partner, but I know when the difficult times, difficult moments come, I know who I'm going to pick that phone up and speak to, whether it is day or night. You know, we all have that one person or two, three people who, you know, you can reach out. You know, that's life, unfortunately. You know, if you want to have a cup of coffee and go clubbing, you know who to go to. And if you want to, you know, shed tears and be listened to and be a rock for you, you know whom to go to. So what are your thoughts about it?
Yes, straight away for me, my first go-to person, what normally would be a mother, if you have that relationship. That for me was not, I love my mother and I have a very good relationship, but this was not the situation that allowed me to do that. It was my very best friend, Glenys, and she's known as my bestie. And my bestie was the one that had stood by the test of time, and she'd known Martin. She's the godmother of the children. And she was there for me as somebody that I could throw the arms on her, shed the tears, and she comforted me, because she comforted me in the fact she understood the journey. She had seen the highs and the lows, and she just could just let me be me. It didn't matter how I looked, how I cried. It just allowed me to break down like I needed to break down properly to cry. And she was my go-to number one person. The thing about children in this situation is that I wanted to be there for my children, to give them the comfort of their loss, their dad passing. But I also, my children are very independent and very intelligent young adults, that I didn't want to impose my upset upon them, because I knew they would be dealing with it in their own different way. And each child is very different. So my most sensitive child is my middle boy, Charlie. And I wasn't sure whether, if I go and give him a hug or spend time to talk, is he going to cope, or does he need space? So again, I was mindful of the children in their space, and I just offered the help. I said, I know that right now we're all hurting in different ways. I want you to know that I'm here. And if you want to do one by one or a collective as a mum here with you, you need to let me know is the best way we can, I can support you in this difficult time? I asked. The problem is in our world today is a lot of people tell people what they should do, but they don't ask. They don't ask. There's too much telling, dictating, expecting. People are not asking and being mindful what somebody else is. They just think at that moment what they're doing. And that's important for it. So I asked the children how best would they see it. The same as even writing my book, I needed to ask that what they thought of the bit I wrote about them. Were they okay? Because if it's going to be printed in thousands of copies, I want the children to be so on point to know that mother's taken their viewpoint, because we all matter, and because we all matter, everyone's feelings and thoughts and words matter to what is allowing them the space to work with.
Sure. Thank you so much, Ghazala. I couldn't agree more. It's ask questions, don't make assumptions, isn't it?
Yes.
You have to ask questions. And I did exactly the same thing. As a single mom, I mean, the only person, one and only person I asked was my daughter. Nobody else. My parents never read my book till it was published, because I knew there will be bits and pieces will have to be omitted or added or whatever, and I didn't want it to be added in any way. But obviously when it comes to children, it's very, very different ball game. So I told her, well, read it. This is your last chance.
Yes.
Once it goes to print, I have no control over it.
Mm.
So, you make the decision, read it, and a couple of very minor changes I did make, but mostly it was okay. So, and I totally accept and, agree with you that always ask, I guess. And I think it is having that person to cry with. And for the request for all of you who is listening to this is, are you going to be that person who can really, someone can come up to you and cry with? Please take a moment and think about it, really. I think, Ghazala, crying and comforting in my world is slightly different, right? Because it's not always the person who you go to cry to, you get comfort. It could be different, it could be the same person, but it in different scenarios for different people is different thing. Who is it for you find the most comfort from?
I actually find comfort, solitude is my solitude space of comfort. I reflect a lot in my meditation or relaxation, or just certain scent or certain music or certain space gives me comfort to cope with what I need to think about. Like I say, my mother, I ring every week, ask for her prayers for the good path we're on. I ask for my mum's wishes for her, to keep me on the right path so we stay in touch. I tell my mother always I love her, because the mother needs to hear that I love you from the children. And I also pray for her health. So she's somebody that comforts me for the every day that I feel like I'm on the journey, that I've got the mother's prayers, I've got the good heart in a space of doing good, and that's my comfort space. My own lonely space is also when I need to detach energy from people. I need to bring that strength of my own, like, what am I feeling? What do I want to do? What is stopping me from doing it? And why don't I just breathe in and out of this space, just to give me that retreat space, that switch off the world a minute, detach, because that attachment to myself is really comforting to how I move forward. It's my strength of moving forward.
Sure. Thanks, Ghazala. Because, people who know me very well know I thrive around other people. I do. But I also need that me time to, particularly when I'm going through a difficult time, everybody knows that I need that me time to recover, rest and recover, because otherwise I think I'm no good to myself nor anybody else. So I need that time to recover. Yes, like you said, I mean, my mom is on the platform, so she's listening. So she calls me every single morning. So I'm blessed. So I speak to her every day, sometimes 3-4 times a day, not only to me, she speaks to my friends as well, most times. So, of course, she becomes a mom to all my friends. Then that is a blessing on its own. I used to cry with her, I must say, when, might be 20 years before, 20, 30 years before. However, I think as they grow older and circumstances change, we become protective about our parents, than the other way around. So I think now, of course, I go to my friends more to cry with, I guess, but the comfort is still there. And I couldn't agree more with you. I need the comfort of people who love me, but I also really need the comfort from the me time, from the solitude, and being able to think about things without any influence from outside world. So I totally agree with you. Thank you, Ghazala, for such a powerful story. But I know that you're very, very strong and a positive person. After all, despite of all these experiences, you're one of the most positive and positive influences, I guess. And I know even recently you played football as a woman in the football club. I was because we are connected in the social media. And, who better to ask? How do you manage it?
People say, yeah, exactly that question. Ghazala, you're doing so many different things. Is how do you stay positive through what you've gone through? And for me, the term from tragedy to triumph was important, because we don't know who we're affecting around our life. And it's a sense of responsibility that we've come through a journey where we've been students, we've done the apprenticeship, we're also servant-driven leaders as well in the space that we are. And there's someone that is needing a little inspiration in their life, and we owe it to stay good for others as well. All right. And for me, when I do the mad things, the crazy things, I mean, as you know, I'm an award-winning Bollywood burnout business, and that was my own personal journey, which was from Pakistani girl doing Indian dance, which was like, how's that? How does that work on Western soil? That was a challenge, and I was like, they're saying, yeah, but you're Pakistanis. Normally Indian people do the dance. I said, and my ancestry is Indian anyway, so that's fine. My roots are there. And then I said, so here we go. So Pakistani girl doing Indian dance on Western soil for fitness and fun. And when I remember telling my father, I was going to tell him I was doing a dance to my Muslim father, I was waiting for what we call Jutti coming. And I was thinking, right.
Just a second. Jutti is supposed to be the slippers or shoes or whatever you say.
Slipper on the head, yes. So I thought, oh dear, my dad's going to tell me off. But when I showed him a little bit of some of the dance in the community culture part of it, he said in his Urdu, he said, mashallah, you're a good dancer. And because he was like, wow. And I said, yes, well, anyway, Dad. So I didn't want to tell him I had taken lessons. But anyway, the point was that when you're in that way, people who don't know what your heartache is, but you have to put the front of the professional position. In my classes that I was teaching Bollywood fitness classes, none of my students ever knew, the girl that's teaching us right now, that her world is breaking and crumbling. Nobody knew, nobody could see, because remember, again, your professional head is you've got to still do the job. And it wasn't until after that they said, oh my God, she'd been going through all this, Martin being ill with cancer, and she was training, she was teaching, because when your heart is breaking, the last thing you want to do is dance. Dance is joyful. And it, even though, and your responsibilities, I've got 5-year-old children in my class. I've got 85-year-old people in my class. And my world was one story, but I had to close the front door of my house and go and teach. With my business, so many people in my organization, thousands and thousands of people in my organizations, I was doing across the world, from different time zones, from Australia to UK to US to Europe, and the time zones. It was like having to take a coffee, staying awake, teaching people. All this stuff had to go because there was a major responsibility that it's like the show goes on. It's also like you can have levels of depression. It's like Robin Williams, they see him as a fun character, but behind it, he was breaking away in his own world. What was going on? People don't see that. As a result of a lot of things that I did in the busyness, the thing that really kept me busy was Martin's wish was to raise awareness for pancreatic cancer. And that was the wish that was my mechanism for survival to keep going. And that is when I took the campaign Positive Purple I lit up the castle. I took people up to the highest mountain of England and Wales, a team of people, to do a high five to Martin to say, hey, you left a wish. We fulfilled it. Mission accomplished. And we could just really be proud and tribute to that. Those things, my busyness, led to people seeing my work, and then my calling for people saying, oh my God, you wouldn't know she's lost her husband, but the work she's doing, she's raised £11,000. She's writing her book. She's teaching the community projects. Bollywood Burnout has raised £150,000 for charities and community projects. This meant that there was no stopping of my work coming my way. Doors were opening, and it was because it's come in a good way to make a difference. And you can't say no when you actually put your work out there. And that busyness really kept me going, and I think and that's why I'm still here, still doors opening and opportunities to share and do good stuff in the community.
Sure. Thanks, Ghazala. What happens when I have powerful speakers with powerful stories is I totally forget about time. So before one of my team members tell me, I'm glad I picked up on it. So, but quickly, I need to ask a couple of questions because they're very important. Firstly, what prompted you write the book? Because I know why I wrote the book, and I know there's always a story why people write books. So what is yours?
The main reason for writing the story is that there was a lot of things that failed the system of the patients, and a lot of misdiagnosis that happened. And there were three reasons I wrote the book. One was to pay the tribute to Martin, because it was a way of a closure for me to move on in my life, in parking the heartache in a book so that I can have the strength to move on and do Martin proud for the last wish of his. The second was to raise awareness, to do good about the cancer awareness, because that was missing for information about. People need to know that one of the lowest forms of survival rates is pancreatic cancer, and that was that. And third was to be the voice those that never got heard, because they were misdiagnosed when they said they're not well. They were misdiagnosed for depression. Actually, there was underlying cancer condition. And those were the three main reasons that I wrote the book, Loved, Lived, Lost. And there's the subtitle, In Sickness and in Health Till Death Do Us Part, was also a big sign of a commitment to a marriage, a relationship, and through everything that's thrown at you is to make that point be made.
Sure, and I had so many other questions, but I'm going to wrap up with one important question. What are your words of wisdom at the times of tragedy for others?
I think my words of wisdom for anybody is that if we just can be mindful for the person that's going through a loss, a grieving process, is to support them for the best, for what's there for them, not about what they need to say to them, but what is there for them. Ask them the questions and let them know that you're there of a support, and do the check-ins with people. The check-ins with people is somebody could be suffering in silence, but don't know how to come out of it, and bring people out into the space, because that's going to give them the breathing space for new energy that makes them feel like they're living again. And that's what the loved one that's lost in our lives would want, is for us to be happy to move on in that space.
Sure. Thank you so much, Ghazala, for the wonderful sharing, really, because you definitely made me lose my words, which doesn't happen very often for me, because it's what people have to understand. Each one of you who is going to be in that position one day or the other, for someone or the other, it is all about them. It's not about you. So, please ask, what do they want, how you can help them, and do just what they want. It's not your problem what they want or what they want to do. Just be there to support them, be there to listen to them, cry with them, whatever. But it is not your story, and please don't try to make it your story. Just leave it there and just support them in any way and form you can. Thank you so much, Ghazala. If you don't mind, Ghazala, can I ask you one more question? Because I think this is really, really important question. What message would you give to others going through grief or loss?
I think you need to rest through the process as well. Personal rest is important to cope with it, because it's, again, from the sleep is important, because my problem was that I didn't sleep and I got very ill. I ended up in hospital, and that's being burnt out through the process of grief. Personal care, rest, and time out is really, really important to do that. For to cope with the process. It's a long process, and there's no time frame of how long it takes to heal, because for me it will be 7 years this October since Martin passed away, and I can talk now with emotion and it can eat me up straight away. So rest and time out is important.
Sure. Thank you so much, Ghazala. Apologies, sincere apologies. I really, really respect you. So thank you so much, darling, for coming back and speaking.
Thank you for having me, and thanks for everybody that's listening in. And hopefully they've taken. It's not the easiest subject to talk about, but it's such an important one. And I think that we all should talk about this subject openly, because life and death, the fact of life is we're born. The fact of life is we're going to go. And it's the bit in between that's important. And we should be sharing this subject more often.
Sure. Thank you so much for, before I give the vote of thanks, but for everyone, for next week, we are taking a break. I think it's a very well-deserved break, because after celebrating 1 year, we have hardly ever taken a break from the session. So this time, all the team members asked that, for the bank holiday, they want a break, and which we have decided to take. So next week is not going to be there. And after that, it will be a respiratory consultant who will be coming and speaking. Before that, over to the one and only Kirubai to give the vote of thanks.
We'd like to personally thank the people who have so graciously come on Facebook to listen to this such an important, heartwarming sharing by Ghazala. We thank you, Facebook viewers. And also, we like to thank all the participants who are on this platform, Meet Menaca, Celebrating You talk show. We like to thank together Ghazala Jabeen. We want to celebrate you. We want to celebrate together with you for the life you led with Martin and the life you are leading now with your children, and how you are impacting lives. Being real, vulnerable, and true to yourself, it comes out, it shines out so clearly that your truth is touching many people's lives. There's one word, one sentence, a phrase that talks about who you are as a person is, Ghazala, a wide open door for great works has opened for you. Go forth and empower many with this experience, because you are enriching and touching lives. Thank you, Ghazala. Once again, gratitude to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for those beautiful words. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Kirubai. And I know that Kirubai has been touched and she's in tears, because I know Kirubai hardly does it, and nor do I. We are two strong women. You have definitely managed to touch us today and bring us to tears. So thank you so much for that heartfelt sharing. Please hold on. All of you on the Zoom, please hold on, because you will be getting a chance to ask the speaker the question, put the question straight to the speaker. Please hold on. For people who are listening to us on the Facebook, I'm so sorry, Suja. I know you're not prepared, but I just definitely want you to say something about our cultural background and how difficult it is for widows in our culture. If you can tell a few words, Suja, please, before I let everybody else to ask a question directly to Ghazala, please.
Sure, Menaca. As Menaca said, I'm just going to be speaking from my existing knowledge rather than a research knowledge specifically today. However, it must be addressed, because a widow is someone who's viewed as an unlucky person in our culture. Unfortunately, that's the truth and the fact. For example, Ghazala just explained she was a widow at a very young age, very, very young age. And I lost an uncle when he was 48 years old, and his wife was just 45 as well. And fortunately, my family didn't treat her extremely to the level of all the issues. However, when my sister got married, she wasn't allowed to carry one of the thalis that you take for the wedding as a wedding gift.
For people
I
who don't
saw
know
that
thali, which means
it's just
it is a jewelry the bridegroom puts for the bride when we get married.
not even to that level. Just because the wedding party, when they arrive at the wedding set place, they take these plates full of wedding special gifts. And and my mum's sisters were there, my other sister aunties were there, but my uncle's wife was not there, which bothered me. And I saw that, and also not just that, even pre-wedding preparations. If we are making something for the wedding, she wasn't included. And it's not that she wasn't included, she just goes 100 meters away from the whole situation because she just doesn't want to be there and people to say something. And that is unacceptable. What did she do wrong? I mean, my uncle wouldn't have allowed that to happen to his wife, but that's what they said. And she was telling me, oh, we are not supposed to be there. I said, who are we? And also this concept of pottu, which is the bindi. This is something all girls from our culture wear from the day they were born. They're allowed to wear it, and the color slightly changes when they get married. But why should they drop it when they lose a husband? This is something their birthright. They had it from the day one. They just carried on, and just because the husband is no more there, why should they lose that? But that's what expected of them. Even some in South Indian culture, wearing flowers on their hair is quite a normal thing on daily life. But they are expected to drop that. When you're a kid, you're allowed to wear flowers. This is not something your husband brought it to you. When you're married, you're allowed to wear it. But the day you drop the husband, and if they are allowed to drop this as well, already they just lost their loved ones, the biggest part of their life, their best part of their lives. And then they have to deal with all of it. And they even have a small ritual to remove the wedding chain of this woman who's recently lost her husband, putting them through more and more pain when they're trying to grieve the loss. We never allow that. We never get the opportunity. We don't give the woman the opportunity to grieve at her own terms. We are dictating terms for her to grieve. And that's unfortunately, we have come a long way. I'm not denying that. We have come quite a long way, but still such unacceptable practices are existing, which should be stopped. And as a collectively, as a society, we have to take that step.
Time to change.
It is indeed, like Ghazala said, it is the change, the community that has changed. As Martin told her, that's the community that we should be part of. We should be taking that next step and stopping all those women who are losing their husband for whatever the reason. They're already in pain. Support them rather than torturing them even more.
Yeah. I mean,
so it's in our hands now. We have to take it forward.
Like Suja, I mean, when I got married, my grandmom said to me the same thing. And people who know me closely, even my book, this platform was, my awards anywhere is always dedicated to my grandmom because I was very, very close to her. I only said one thing. If you are not coming for the wedding, there's no wedding. We can just register the marriage. And I'm having no wedding, no inviting anyone unless until you're going to be there. And so obviously she had no choice but to be there. So I think we all have a chance to put our stand and do these things. So I think whether we are braving it to do it or do we want change, because it could be easily you in a few years' time. Do you want to be that person? Or do you want to be that person who is going to show the light and pave the path and, create change and become the change for many, many to follow? I think that's a question for each one of you to think. Thank you so much, Suja. I'm so sorry. I think this had to be addressed because when I picked this topic, it was in my mind to talk about it. There was a WhatsApp chat going on separate. And I just figured out Suja was talking about exactly the same thing as I started talking about the cultural difficulties. So, great minds think alike indeed. Thank you so much for being there, supporting us like always. And if this story doesn't move you, I have no idea what will. So, but please be that person to support, to listen, to be there for people around you, because particularly during the COVID, there is so much loss, so much grief, so much suffering around us. So please, please, please be that person that who someone can come and count on to be there for you themselves. So I really hope, as a community of supporters of Meet Menaca, and we celebrate you all the time, and I really hope you celebrate everybody in your life as well. So for people who are listening to us from Facebook, thank you so much for listening. It's that time of the day to say goodbye. Until we see you in 2 weeks' time on the Sunday at 2 o'clock afternoon in the UK and 6:30 in India, Sri Lanka, Pakistan time. Stay safe, be happy, and keep smiling.